All right, here we are. This is the first podcast of 2020. This is the TickTocking podcast coming at you from TickTocking.com. I'm at Steve Halleck on Instagram. I really appreciate when you guys tell your friends, your watch buddies, to go look at my channel. I love getting good feedback, kind words. It helps a lot, helps me keep this thing going. For 2020, I've really made a point to make more videos, more podcasts, more Q&As. I'm in a new studio. I've got a new setup. You'll have to bear with me a little bit while I figure out sort of the technical challenges involved in upgrading everything and making the best quality stuff that I can. It's just me. I'm not a video expert. I'm not a sound expert, but I'm really gonna try this year to up the quality and up the frequency of everything. So please bear with me on that. I do have kind of three different types of content coming at you right now. So the first and the main thing are the watch reviews. That's where I take, a watch, wrist check, Grubel 4C double tourbillon technique is on my wrist today. So the reviews are where I take a watch, we go macro on the table, take a nice look at it, and kind of the point of these, I started this before I was even selling watches as a business, but I had a lot of cool watches that would come through on my hands, and I just wanted to share my love of mainly independent watches with the world. These are very hard to get your hands on. Not many people get to see them, and it's a bummer when I get something that I know is never going to see the light of day again, and I couldn't share it. So I love to share this with people and kind of explain why I think that this is the part of horology to focus on. So this is the point of the watch reviews, and to try to also make these more accessible and more approachable to people. It's not about every intricate technical thing. Most people aren't interested in that stuff. If you are, you can always dig deeper. But I want to try to explain complex watches to normal people like me and you. So that's the watch reviews. That'll always be the core of this channel. Number two is the podcast like this. So I've started doing this in two ways. I make the video. The video goes on YouTube. If you like to watch my face, you can, but it's totally not necessary. I'm gonna make sure that for these kinds of things, they really don't need visuals. Maybe I'll cut in some stills or something every now and then to help with what I'm talking about. But in general, the visuals won't be needed. So if you like to listen in your car, if you like to listen at the gym, I listen to podcasts when I wake up too early in the morning and I put them on and try to go back to sleep. So any of those things, the podcast for you. Here's where I'm gonna get into a little bit more discussion topics, what I think about the market, maybe what I think about certain pieces, and maybe just the more philosophical areas that I like to go into of kind of collecting in general. And then the number three, what I've started doing are Q&As. And I started this at the end of last year, and I think they're kind of fun. So I'm gonna try mainly on Fridays at around 10 a.m. Pacific. I'm gonna try to do a Q&A each Friday. So what that'll be is on YouTube. It'll be a live video, and there's like a little chat box where you can put in any question, and I will try to answer it. I don't answer all of them. I don't get to all of them. Some are repetitive, so I don't want to go through the same thing every time. Also, if you do have some questions, you can leave them in either comments or emails to me during the week if you can't make it there, because the Q&As themselves are then uploaded onto the channel, and they're there to watch even if you weren't able to be there live. So anyway, make sure you do check in Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm here in Los Angeles. So that'll be the time that you can get in a live question, and I'll try to answer it then. So that's it. Those are the three. As I said, I'm going to try to keep doing better and better quality. I'm going to try to do more and more and more consistent videos and podcasts and all that stuff. So this is my My New Year's resolution. I don't know if you guys make New Year's resolutions, but hopefully I'll be able to stick to this one. Okay, cool. So, 2020, I thought I'd start by talking about maybe some of my thoughts and predictions for the year. I got into this a little bit last year, but it was mainly on a Q&A. I really think that the world is kind of headed towards independence a little bit more. And maybe this is my bias, maybe this is a little bit self-serving. I mean, obviously this is the area I've been focused on for 15 years now. But I see a lot of shifts in this way, and I'll tell you kind of a few of the things that I'm seeing. So, number one, I think the information has sort of been flattened across platforms. So what I mean by that is it used to be you'd mainly learn about things via like magazine ads or something, which are very expensive, and only the biggest brands would buy them, and they'd kind of pepper you with Rolex ads and Patek ads and Breitling ads, and you're never going to see a Gronfeld ad or a Kari Voutilainen ad or something like that, right? So there was this huge chasm between the big brands and the little guys. And then came the forums, where if you happen to be, a watch nerd like me, you'd be on these forums and you could dive deep and you'd get into these very little brands. It was still pretty niche and obviously that way, but you could get some of the information. Now we're seeing an interesting thing though, where most people are getting their information from blogs or from maybe Instagram, and the information is flattened a little bit. So take Hodinkee, for example. They're kind of a lightning rod for criticism and praise and everything because they're the big guys on the block, but they're always going to do more coverage towards Tudor and Vacheron and these brands. They're selling in their shop, and also they're kind of their personal aesthetic. They're into vintage, whatever, but they do happen to really like indie watches, and they give a decent amount of coverage to indie watches. And if you see an article on there about Gronfeld or something, that's going to the same amount of people that the articles on Paul Newman's Daytona are going to. So that really helps. But I think the biggest one is Instagram. Instagram's huge right now, and you're starting to see, collectors can post their watches, or dealers, but most dealers don't own this stuff. You start to see these things posted more and more, and they just become a little bit more normal. So I don't see a ton of Breitling or Ulysse Nardin or Gerard Perregaux or, a lot of these fairly big brands. They're not that prevalent in my feed, and I do see a lot of Kari and Gronfeld and Grubel Forsey and De Bethune and mb&f and Urwerk and all these guys that I love. Now, of course, this is my personally curated feed with my own taste, but the point is that you do see these more often repetitively as you're scrolling, and so I think they become a little bit more normal part of life than they were previously, and I think that is leading people to be more, maybe the word is comfortable with independent watches. They're more acceptable. More people know what they are. A lot of people, even if they're pretty strong-willed and pretty self-confident, still, rightly so, feel a little bit weird paying a ton of money for a thing that nobody they know has ever heard of or recognizes or whatever. So as this is coming, you're starting to have a community around these little brands, which really helps. Another thing is that just the demographics are moving in this direction. As my generation gets a little bit older, gets some money, we were kind of raised, I'm 37. We were raised in this era where luxury wasn't the same thing that it was for the generation 1 or 2 before us. And in fact, to many of us, it's kind of almost a bad word, luxury. So what my generation of consumer really looks for are these genuine products, genuine expressions of craft, art, who's making things in the way that it should be made, what sort of thing can we buy where the value is really there. We don't want to think we're buying an artisanal product, but then end up finding out that it was decided on in a boardroom somewhere and outsourced to wherever, and unhappy people put it together in an unhappy way and delivered it to us, and then put a coat of shine on it and tried to sell us a bill of goods. So this all goes towards the independents. Again, these are the perfect types of watches for my generation and my kind of ethos of consumer, because this is where the real deal is. These are real people putting their heart and soul into these watches and trying to make the best things that they can make. And the third thing is that as big brands are starting to change the kind of retail landscape, they are moving out of multi-brand retailers and into their own boutiques, into their own distribution channels. And this is kind of changing the sales dynamic. So for these retailers and even a lot of secondary market dealers, the independents are starting to be a much more attractive proposition. It's product that is that's there, that people want, that they can still have some margin on, and also because of these first two things that I mentioned, as consumers get more and more comfortable with them, dealers get more and more comfortable stocking and selling them. So that's all kind of happening together, and I feel that the tide is shifting even further into the independent world, which I'm thrilled about. That's the whole purpose of this channel. It's the whole purpose of my business, is to get people to put their money behind these great creators and help this art form go on in history and continue and be around for years to come. So I want excitement in this area, and I think I'm getting it, which is awesome. So some specific brands to watch in 2020. Again, my own bias, totally self-serving. I have my own outlook on the world, so perhaps that colors it. But I really feel like two of my favorites, which are De Bethune and Greubel Forsey, are both going to have really big years this year. De Bethune, mainly because of the things that I just mentioned. I think they're a really good brand for people to go to when they're just trying to get into the independent world. They're just obviously very cool. They're very well made. They're super comfortable, and they can be had at fairly reasonable price points. So the next is Greubel Forsey. Greubel Forsey. I really think they're going to have a huge year, and this is, of course, due to all of the things that I've mentioned, but also in addition, I think their sport watch, which they released at the end of 2019, is really strong, and it's going to bring a lot of new customers to the brand, people that may not have paid attention before. I think here you kind of have to talk about Richard Mille a little bit. Richard Mille, one of their main contributions to the market, is, whatever you think of them, is getting people used to paying more money for watches. So you have a whole new group of customers that are totally comfortable paying $150, $200, $250, even $600,000 or $700,000 for watches. And whether you think Richard Mille's are worth it or not, this brings you into Greubel Forsey territory. Greubel Forseys are the most expensive brand overall, and for a really good reason. They are finished to the nines. They're just made in such a way that you couldn't possibly make them for kind of the money that mere mortals could ever afford. But they, to date, they may not have had the eye of a lot of these buyers, but I think that more and more those people are going to start looking at this brand and realizing that if you're going to spend that kind of money, this is where you can do it and really kind of get your money's worth out of it. So I really expect them to be quite strong in 2020. The sport watch is awesome. I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of other variations of that, different complications, different price points, stuff like that. And I think it will only add to their overall catalog and only bring people into watches like this Technique or the IP1 on my site or any of their other kind of more classic models. Those will always be kind of the tip-top pinnacle there. So these are just some thoughts, some things I'm keeping my eye on this year. I think it's going to be a really exciting year. I'm excited to do my job this year, keep getting in cool watches, buying everything that I can find that is really great, bringing them to you guys, making as many videos as I can, trying to juice up the quality on everything. This is a fun challenge for me. It's fun to try to learn about different media and figuring out all this technical stuff. So this is gonna be an interesting one, guys. I'm glad that you're along for the ride. Again, tell your friends, share my videos. Feel free, obviously, if you find ones that you like, share the podcast and really share the reviews. That's the biggest thing. Show your friends what you think is a really cool watch, and hopefully I can explain it in a way that even your friend who isn't into watches can understand why it's a really cool thing. So I'm wishing you a very happy, healthy, prosperous 2020. Thanks for being along on the ride with me, and I'll be back a little bit later this week. I'll do another review video Friday at 10 a.m. Be there or be square. We'll have a Q&A. Hit me in the comments, hit me on email, hit me on Instagram, and I'll see you Friday.